Tano, a very, very warm welcome to No Boundaries. I am Laura McGoldrick. Plenty of cricket happening in the world at the moment, and to talk it through with me, I have got Scott Styris in studio and Ross Taylor coming down the line from Kirikiriroa. G'day, Roscoe, how are you?
Hey, Laura. Hey, Scott.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's nice to have you boys back together again. We haven't put them in the same room in case they bicker. Look, I'll start with you, Scotty. Last week we had Shane Bond on the show, Mike Hesson, and we were talking about this Australia-India series, the Border-Gavaskar series. Everyone was so excited for it. It's been, if you're a cricket fan, it's been on the cards. We were counting off the days till it got here, and it came, and we weren't sure what India were going to do, given what had happened to them via New Zealand over in India. But they came, they saw, they conquered. It was a wild ride. How good was it to watch Australia with their tails between their legs?
Oh, well, in many fronts, I think you could put your feet up on the desk, put your sunglasses on and just kick back, because from the Indian perspective, we've just smashed them, and then they've just been demolishing Australia. Seeing the fallout of that, seeing the Australians now struggle, their top order under a huge amount of pressure, the bowlers talking about the batters need to sort themselves out and post-match press conferences. Everything is looking good from a Kiwi cricket fan's perspective when it comes to those two teams in particular. Two outstanding sides, of course, but some big issues for Australia. You don't often see the batting that they've struggled with like they have in this game over the last 20 or 30 years. It's been a real problem.
It was just wonderful, Roscoe, as a Kiwi. I mean, and you know what it's like going over there and playing Australia. They're a very, very good side. But this India side, they didn't have Rohit Sharma. Jasprit Bumrah, unbelievable. He's been lauded for his captaincy tactics throughout the test. What did you make of it? What was your summation of what you saw over in Perth?
Yeah, I mean, winning the toss and when they were all out for 150, you started to think, is this going to be enough? But it was a good toss to win, to see the way Bumrah led from the front and, put pressure on that top order. McSweeney had a tough start to his test career. But I think, New Zealand played well in India, but I did feel that India were probably, they did have an eye on this series, while we were over there. But no, it was a good time. Obviously, Perth in New Zealand, watching with the family, it was awesome. But no, anytime Australia are getting beaten and convincingly in their own conditions, any cricket fan, apart from Australians, would be happy.
What I do like too is they always say in boxing, don't they, styles make fights. And I think in what we saw as well was a really good cricket pitch. It's no secret I'm not a huge test cricket guy. I'm more of the shorter versions of the game fan. Yeah, there you go. But when there's a bit in there for the fast bowlers in particular on the first day, 2 days, and then we started seeing the ball rip out of cracks or footmarks, and there was always something in there. So I do enjoy test cricket when they aren't the flat roads that just become boring and predictable as the game goes on. So what I did like about that match was the fact that everyone was involved. You had to fight for every run, and we saw those who were prepared to do it, those who had the skills, and the bowlers like Bumrah in particular, who were just outstanding utilising those conditions.
He's unbelievable. Bumrah was player of the match in that. Let's talk about the Indians' batting lineup, because obviously we saw them with bat in hand first. Jaiswal with a duck in the first and 161 in the second innings. That boy can play, Roscoe, and he is really one to look to for the future as we talk a bit about Kohli, who also scored a ton in that second innings. He is one for the future, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's a superstar in the making if he isn't already. It's not easy to go over there, and there's always question marks over young Indian batters. Can they deal with the bounce and obviously the pressures that come with it? Get a duck in the first innings and to go on and score a fantastic, I think that's his fourth in a row over 150, which is equal with Graham Smith. He's a fantastic player, hits all around the ground, and I think, every now and then there's just a bit of an agricultural shot to his 2020 game. But as you said, Kohli too, I think he's had a quiet 5 years. He only scored 2 test hundreds, but to come out in those conditions, it was easier. I think the way KL Rahul and Jaiswal started, he wasn't under as much pressure, but it's always good to knock that off. And we know what Kohli's like. He likes to get into the battle. And who better to get it against than Australia? He's got a fantastic record over there, and that whole top order has got a bit of confidence. Rohit Sharma to come back in should be interesting. Who drops out in that regard, but all in all, a fantastic game for them. Obviously, getting bowled out for 150 in that first innings to come back and score over 400. I'm sure they'll take that.
I'm sure they definitely will. And I think the thing with Kohli I really enjoyed was when he came off after scoring that 100, Adam Gilchrist interviewed him and he said, I don't just want to be here because of my reputation, I want to be here and score runs. Like, it means a lot playing for India. I'm paraphrasing slightly, that was not how he said it, but you know what I mean. Words to that effect. It means so much to play for him and he wants to contribute, he wants to perform. How much does that set the tone for what could be an unbelievable series for him and this batting lineup if they get it right for this Indian side, Scott?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things there. One, it just shows, and Ross can attest to this more than anyone, when you come in at number 4 and the platform has been set, it's a lot easier to score runs in that situation. Once the ball's old, the bowlers are into their third spells, it's not zipping around as much. And Kohli, he's so good, so mentally strong, he was able to take advantage of that. Shubman Gill's another that would be at number 3 in this side if he was fit. I'm not a huge believer in Dev Dutt Padikkal as a batsman. He's got huge holes in his technique. So the fact that they can only get better as well is the scary part for Australia. And I think they would have felt, with the ball nipping around, that would have exposed that Indian top order. And it did the opposite. It brought the Indian seamers into the game. India were able to blunt the new ball from Australia and allow the likes of Kohli, who can now relax for the rest of the series. Yeah. He can just sit back and go, you know what, I don't have that pressure now. I've got 100 in this series.
That feels a concerning way to have Kohli in this series, though. Relaxed, like monkeys off the back, no worries.
In some ways, I think that's the worst version of Kohli. Roscoe mentioned it. Loves the fight. I think he's missed out a lot in the last 5 years because he's a bit nicer. I think when he gets that abrasive confrontational part of him, that's when he's at his best. Not many players can pull that off. He's one of them who can. And maybe if he is too relaxed, then we go back to seeing the old Kohli. I'd love to see him get in the faces of the Australians.
Oh, me too. I do. I love any Kohli, but that Kohli particularly, I know the one you're talking about. That is so good. If we look at this Australian side, Pat Cummins is under immense pressure with what to do with his team, although has come out and said that this team will remain unchanged for the second test, which is interesting. A lot of questions around their batting lineup. I mean, I saw a pre-match interview where someone was saying, I believe actually it was Pat Cummins saying, no, Steve Smith looks good, iron, all good. He's come in, he's got his eyes on the whole thing. Not to be the case, unfortunately, for him this time round, but you've got Steve Smith, who doesn't look like Steve Smith. You've got Marnus Labuschagne. Now, what to do with Marnus? And then you've got this poor old McSweeney at the top. What a hell of a start to his Test career, Ross. I don't mind seeing a batting order in pieces, but what did you make of the Aussies' performance with the bat?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to give him a little bit of rope. I think McSweeney on your first game coming up against Bumrah, he's made a lot of batters look silly. For me, it's probably Labuschagne. I think he struggled for a couple of years now. He's not really moving his feet. He's never been a big feet mover, but he just looks all out of sync. I probably agree with Cummins a little bit. I think Smith is starting to, he's starting to look like the Steve Smith of old, but no, I think there's some big question marks around Labuschagne, and then we probably haven't discussed Hazelwood and his comments. It was an interesting comment on day 3, talking about a little bit of a fracture between batters and bowlers, but it just shows you how human that bowling lineup is. If you get them to, bowl 100, 110 overs, they're just like anyone else. They did get tired, and India made them pay.
Yeah, part of that too, I think, Laura, is the mindset that Marnus Labuschagne, he is the one, I think, that is the biggest concern, being none off 23 when I last saw, and then getting, was it 2 or 52 or thereabouts by the end of his innings. He's not putting any pressure back on the bowlers, and that's when the bad balls come along, when the bowler's running in thinking, oh, I cannot miss here because if I do, I'm going to get put away. And for me, the toughest bowler to ever bowl to was Virender Sehwag. Because of that, if you miss slightly, he would hit you. So you were under pressure. If you're being allowed and dictated, or the bowler's able to dictate where he's bowling and you're just going to leave the ball, there is no pressure back on the bowler. And so he just died in a hole, Marnus Labuschagne, and it didn't allow them to get to any flow, which is why I love the way that Travis Head approached it. He did throw some pressure back on the Australian fast bowlers the Indian fast bowlers, and got them the innings going with some momentum. So, we know they're all great players. They just perhaps need to change the mindset they're going in with.
Yeah, Travis Head doesn't mind scoring runs in Perth. When we talk about the captain, Pat Cummins, a lot was made of, he was applauded for the way he came out Carter's night watchman on that third day. It was a big move. It was a power move. It says a lot about his the way he feels about the team. I guess that he put his hand up and said, "I'll do that." Didn't pay off. Didn't pay dividends. Certainly didn't pay off for Marnus either. But what did you make of his decision making as captain through this test? Because we've talked about, you know, the Ashes and also this Border-Gavaskar series. You know, it's starting to really get some legs. People love it. They love this rivalry between India and Australia. So for him, this is the one that they've talked about, you know, a bit of pressure on this one for Pat Cummins. They want to win this. This is the one they need to win as a unit, and then would make that be all the trophies, I think, in their cabinet.
Yeah, I don't think he was bad by any stretch of the imagination. The opening partnership for India in that second innings really did take the game away from them, put them behind the 8 ball with the lead after the first innings as well. There's only so much you can do as a captain at that point. He threw the ball around to all the bowlers, changed his fields up. Those are sort of captaincy 101 things you expect at that level. He went with the short balls from Marnus, so he even thought outside the square and went with different tactics to keep his main bowlers fresh. I think it's just a tip of the cap. Sometimes you do have to tip your cap and say the opposition played well. They got their tactics right. They were able to increase the momentum of their innings when they wanted to, India. So I don't think you can put too much on Pat Cummins' shoulders in that case. At the end of the day, if your top order's not scoring runs, it doesn't matter really what anyone else does. Yeah,
that is a little bit of a problem. When you look at the Aussies bowling unit, Roscoe, I mean, they're so good. I feel like with Hazelwood in that second, I don't know if he always gets the credit he deserves. Like, I feel like that New Zealand bowling unit, everyone always mentioned every single bowler, but it feels like Cummins and Stark and Lyon are the ones that people talk about most. But Hazelwood, I feel like, doesn't get as much of the credit that he deserves. In that first innings to get the 4 wickets, he was brilliant.
Yeah, I think probably more, you know, Stark and Cummins get it from white ball cricket, and I think he's underrated in all 3 formats. You know, I think he just relentless, bangs away at that length, and batters find it hard. One thing I did find surprising was when the ball didn't, stop moving around, that Australian team didn't go short. I mean, you go around the world and teams start bouncing players, come around the wicket, and employing that tactic, the Neil Wagner tactic. They didn't try that at all. I think, you know, if I think of all the times that I went to Australia, we always talk about the bounce and how they're going to come at us short. This team, you know, they just keep trying to pitch it up and trying to nick them off, and that was almost the only way they were going to try and get them out, where, you know, they didn't try and go short at them. And when they did go short at them, I think they did create some opportunity.
It's very quickly on that. It's a huge difference. They did it with Marnus Labuschagne trying to go short, but I mean, he's a batsman in reality. Mitchell Marsh is there. I think that's a sign that they missed Cameron Green. His ability at 6'7" at 140 to be that fourth seamer, bowl 12 overs in a day, short spells, really do bang it in, and just try and change the thinking of the Indian batsman was a sign that he is such an important player.
It's going to be a very interesting second test match to see what happens, and of course we have that all for you on Sky Sport. Let's talk about the IPL mega auction, which has a lot of people talking, as the IPL auctions always do, like what is going on. Plenty of interesting in the unsold category, I thought. David Warner, Johnny Bairstow, Prithvi Shaw, just to name a few of the internationals. But then from the Kiwi lot, Kane Williamson, Daryl Mitchell, Finn Allen, Tom Latham, Mike Bracewell, Adam Milne, O'Rourke, Smith, Jameson, Seifert, Chapman, Henry, Young, Neesham, Ben Sears, all didn't get sold in the auction. Obviously the big names there, Daryl Mitchell after going for so much, and Kane Williamson, Finn Allen, everyone knows what he can do. Who, I guess I'll start with you, Scotty, surprised you most in that lot to not go?
Funnily enough, it's a bit left field, but I'd say Finn Allen. I thought he, Major League Cricket, Roscoe and I were both over there as a commentator and a coach, and he had a really, really good tournament. He was a genuine match winner. There are 6 teams, I think it is, and 3 of those are owned by IPL teams, so they all got to see what a genuine match winner at the top, and he was there with Jake Fraser-McGurk, who we saw take the IPL by storm last time. So as a base money buy, at the minimum, I would have thought he would have been someone who's maybe slowly starting to figure his game out. You know, he hasn't quite delivered as consistently as we would like, but the match-winning abilities are there. And what you do in an IPL auction is you're looking for your 4 overseas starters, and then your other overseas players are not just names that you can fill, but backups to those. I would have thought he would have been a very good backup opening batsman, top order batsman for one of those sides.
Roscoe, for you, who were you surprised that missed out?
Yeah, I think I agree with Scotty. I think Finn was the surprise, but Johnny Bairstow and David Warner, I think, you know, the way that they've had fantastic IPLs over the last couple of years, they did have a quiet one. Did age come into it? But at the same time, you've got a lot of locals who open the batting too. So it's obviously, as Scotty said, it's the 4 players that you try and spend a lot of money on. And then if you're that in between $400 and $1 million, it's pot luck whether you go. So, I think there is obviously still an opportunity that some of these players will get picked up with injuries and that. But no, Finn Allen and David Warner and Bairstow for me were the surprise.
So the Kiwis who did get picked up, Glenn Phillips, Mitchell Santner, Lockie Ferguson, and for $2.5 million, Trent Boult. But the other Kiwi that got picked up was an uncapped international by the name of Bevan John Jacobs. Now, he has moved from Canterbury. He's come to play in Auckland. He went for $61,000 to the Mumbai Indians. How much will he learn from that, whether he plays a game or not, Scotty? And you spend a lot of time in these IPL franchises. You are playing with some big, big names. How much is he going to learn by going over there?
Well, firstly, it doesn't shock me that someone leaves Christchurch then becomes a success.
Usually it's the other way around, actually, Scotty, I think you'll find.
This doesn't surprise me from Mumbai Indians' perspective. They seem to like a shiny new toy every year. Jacobs is the one this year. Great opportunity for him. I think you've got to say that first and foremost. Last year it was Mpaka, the under-19 South African bowler. They pulled out of left field. The year before that, or 2 years before that, was Marco Jansen, before anyone had heard from him. And you could go all the way back to Tyrone Henderson days of the Mumbai Indians. So they do like that. So, I mean, what it is an opportunity for him to learn. I mean, you look at the retentions that Mumbai have had. It's Tilak Warma, it is Rohit Sharma, Hardik Pandya, Surya Kumar Yadav. Those players are all going to be in the top order, so he's not going to get an opportunity in front of them, but I'd be just following them around. If I was him, young player, inexperienced, what are they doing when they train? What are they looking to achieve? How are they successful in these subcontinental conditions against different types of spin? I want to learn and grow my game, because that's where the young players in this country have the most growth to being successful at the international level, and there's no better opportunity than what he's about to get.
No, it's very cool. And age ain't nothing but a number, as it transpires. And you can be 13 and get picked up at an IPL auction, as was the case for a young Indian player who actually has already represented India on the under-19s and a domestic level over there. He's sold for a lot of money. A lot of money, Roscoe. Have you heard about this young lad? What do you know about him, and were you surprised?
I think out of the 2 teams that like to go a bit left field, Mumbai Indians, as Scotty said, and Rajasthan Royals. I think hearing Rahul Dravid talk about him and watching him play, is he going to play straight away? Is it a push to the future? He's going to be 14 during the tournament, but anyone to be playing first class cricket at that age and to have success, he is a big lad. It's not as if he's a little 13-year-old. It reminded me of Ben Stokes and some of those highlights that I've seen. But he can bowl also. But I think Rajasthan, he's a push to the future. Will he play in the first year? But I'm sure in the years to come. And then obviously retentions and things if he is going to be the superstar. But anyone getting picked up at 13, I look forward to seeing how he goes.
Does he need his parents' permission? Like all under 18 kids?
They need to sign a permission slip.
Yeah, like a waiver.
For the next 3 years.
Well, a waiver. Every game, every away trip, he's got to get a permission slip.
Well, I think any sports team in New Zealand, if you're under 18, a parent must be present when they're dealing in a
Not a bad trip to be a part of the old IPL, actually. Dad's got sorry, guys, I can't come to work today. I'm taking my son to the IPL. What were you doing at 13? Actually, you're a professional athlete, so you're probably playing cricket at 13 and 14. I was not. Funny that. So more cricket happening in New Zealand, of course. The big series, England taking on the Black Caps. It starts this weekend in Christchurch. When you look at the sides and who they could potentially pick, you've got a debutant for the English boys. What does the Kiwi lineup look like? Because you've got a bit of a headache now. Will Young playing so well against India, and then you've got Kane Williamson coming back. Nathan Smith, the all-rounder, does he fit in for a debut as well? What would you do? Well,
I think they'll go with the 4 seamers. I don't think that's a surprise. It's been talked about a lot that spinners don't have as big a role in New Zealand conditions. So I think they'll make do with a Phillips and a Rachin Ravindra in terms of the spin bowling options to get between, let's say, the 65 to the 80th over to get the new ball going again. So with that being the case, I do think it'll be the 4 seamers. I think 3 of them will pick themselves, Southey, Henry and Will O'Rourke, and then it does come down to that 4th option. I'd go with Nathan Smith. I think they'll be worried with a number 8 being somebody like a Henry or a Southey. So therefore I would play Nathan Smith in that 4th seamer. He can bat. And you've got to at some stage give these younger guys, in the sense of experience, opportunities. And there is no perfect series to do that, so I would throw him straight in now and give him an opportunity. Jacob Duffy is not great with the bat, and you have a very long tail if that's the case. So it's a pretty simple 11 from the bowling perspective. At the top, maybe Roscoe, as a former CD teammate of Will Young's, might be different, but I think unfortunately he has to miss out.
I think a lot of people are thinking along the same lines of Scotty there, Roscoe. What does your batting lineup look like for the Black Caps? I mean, you know these the Hagley Oval conditions as well. It's the first of the summer. It's a big game. Southeast Farewell Tour starts. What would your Black Caps team look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Will Young fan, and he batted fantastically well in India, but unfortunately I don't see a spot for him in the team. He still averages 30, played 19 games, and still hasn't got that 100 yet. I think that probably plays against him. And if you don't, obviously Kane slips straight back into 3. If he does fit into your order, you're going to have to rejigger a lot of the order around just to fit him in. So I think the way, Stead's very loyal in the way he goes about it. Unfortunately, I don't see a spot for him. What I'd like to see is Glenn Phillips actually come up the order, and he's been batting at 7. And Tom Blundell at 6. I'd like those two to swap over. Glenn Phillips, he's probably the only one who hasn't really cemented his spot, and obviously the bowling aspect that he's worked hard on and been fantastic at for a couple of series now. Just give him that extra responsibility, not just to bowl, but to get up the order and show what he can do.
If they were to make that change in the batting order there, Tom Blundell, he actually is under a little bit of pressure with the bat, has had a tough time of late, and he knows how to get himself out of these ruts that all batsmen go through, but a big series for him.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing with the conditions they're likely to play in. I don't think I'm wrong when I say that Daryl Mitchell, Phillips and Blundell aren't great players of spin, and that makes the impressive victory series in India even better, because they're coming back to conditions now that they do like. They're all 3 of them very good players of fast bowling. So that will help Tom Blundell in terms of the style of bowling that he's best scoring from. I'm with Ross. I felt that should have been the case in India as well. Bring Phillips up to 6. Maybe they like Phillips there to shepherd through the tail. He can so quick between the wickets, he can get back on strike when others can't, and maybe he can use that power that he possesses to score runs. So it might be a little micro tactic that they use, but in terms of, I still believe your 6 best batsmen should be in the top 6, and that for me is Phillips above Blundell, and he should be at 7.
In that England setup, Roscoe, there is a Bethel is making his debut. A lot of people questioning as to why that is. Ben Stokes has come out and said, we don't do it just to upset people. There's a method to the madness of picking him to play. It would be a heck of a task for him, but also you have to feel sorry for folks having the keeper break his finger down in Queenstown in the warm-up game, but he's still the best keeper in England and can't get into the test team. It's a bit unfair, isn't it?
Yeah, and they've had to rejig their order. Pope going down the order, and Bethel, if I'm correct, hasn't scored a first-class 100 of Caribbean descent from Barbados coming in. I think he fits into that Bazball mentality. He will come and be attacking. But yeah, it's surprising. Normally you have to earn your stripes at county cricket, score a truckload of runs. But no, I think he's had success at the white ball in the 2020 and one-day series that they played in the Caribbean. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't think he's pretty unflappable type of character. You see him, he's pretty... Probably like most Caribbean people, he's pretty relaxed, and I'm sure he won't be overawed by the occasion.
When you look at the 2 teams going head to head, do we have to take a bit of Bazball, we being the Black Caps, take a bit of Bazball to the team that really coined the phrase? Bearing in mind, we probably started it because Baz was in our team, and I think we played a lot of that early on. But is that are we going to have to go in with that mentality? Because you can't let that game drift, can you?
I think it's just an understanding that when they come aggressively at you, they're going to have success doing that because they are a talented group of players, that English side. But you only lose if you give up and sort of back off from that fight. If you go back hard at them as well and always stay in the contest, if you're getting hit as a bowler, you've you've still got to come in and try and hit the pitch nice and hard, get the ball to move around, and keep fighting basically the whole way through. Then you'll still get some success. But if you back off, and teams have done that overseas with England, then they just go at 6.5 and over, and that really does seal the Test match in their favour. So it's all about your own attitude, really, on how you're going to counter it. Ross,
what do you think the chances are of New Zealand coming away with a victory here?
Well, I guess we're still in the hunt for the World Test Championship. I think we need to win all three, which I don't think's out of the equation. It's the first series without an Anderson and Broaden. Be interesting how these young seamers enjoy the bounce of especially Hagley and the Basin. You still have to pitch the ball up, and I think that's where we'll have the edge to the way Southey, Bolt, O'Rourke, bringing all modes of dismissal in. But batting first on those conditions can be tough, but we know how to do that. And I think whatever we do first, we need to do well. But if we can sneak a win in that first game, then I think it all bodes well for the rest of the series.
Well, very exciting. I want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for your time today. You are legends. What were you going to say?
Nothing.
I thought we were going to say New Zealand's going to win.
Yes, of course.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Just checking. Thank you so much for joining us. Scott Cyrus is in trouble. You guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us here on No Boundaries. We'll see you soon.